Alright, cool.
Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to Technique Tuesday. Today we are going to go through some shoulder health work, specifically working on rotation through the shoulder. Now this is something that a lot of people are prescribed from physios, healthcare professionals to try and rehab or prehab their rotator cuff, and they're a really good exercise, especially working on that rotation in your shoulder. It's something that gets neglected in a lot of gym programs. However, the one thing that I wanted to talk about is we had an instance here last week where I was talking to somebody and I noticed that they were using a plate and they were doing internal and external rotations with the plate as such, like I'm doing here. And what I explained to them is using a plate is not really the best way to do this particular exercise. And the reason for that is if I'm using a plate, you've got to think of where the plate is actually pulling my arm and where the weight is going. So we all know there's this magical force, not called the force, but it's called gravity, which is actually going to pull this weight down towards the floor. Now, if I'm trying to work my rotator cuff and my shoulder joint, yes, I am getting rotation here, but what's actually happening is the force from this plate is being drawn down to the ground by the force called gravity, and what that's forcing me to do is actually engage my arms and my forearms, my extensors, and my biceps. So the muscles that are getting the most work here are my biceps and my forearms. So, you know, this is an isometric hold for the bicep rather than actually having a weight and putting tension on that rotator cuff. Even though, yes, you are taking that joint through extension and you're getting that rotation, it's not the best way to actually get the stimulus of building up that rotator cuff, that connective tissue and all that musculature around that shoulder, which is what we're doing the exercise for. So usually what we will tell people is trying to use a band. So we've got these bands set up here. You can get bands such as crossover symmetry and things like that. You can even just get a different resistance bands. You can buy these and just one-off from places like Rebel Sport and things like that. But anchoring that around either a door handle, ideally trying to have it in line. Look at me go, dropping it everywhere. Having it anchored in line with my shoulder. And what I want to do is I'm still going to do that internal external rotation movement, so trying to be square to where I've got the bands anchored, keeping that shoulder in, making sure that I'm thinking about good posture, so pulling those shoulder blades down to my back pocket and then pulling across in one smooth, consistent movement, trying to get that nice rotation as I go, not letting that elbow creep out from my rib cage. And what's happening there is the force is directly back away from my shoulder. So while yes, I am engaging my biceps and I'm engaging my forearm, the majority of the force is being taken from my shoulder joint, which is allowing me to get that rotation that I'm looking for without that downward pressure of the weight. So what I'd usually recommend if we're doing this from a rehab, prehab point of view, from getting the shoulder prepped, we're probably going to do 10 reps in, and then I'm going to turn and I'll do 10 reps out. But if I stay facing this way, this is that external rotation, and then if I move, this is the internal rotation. So you go 10 reps out, again keeping that elbow in, turning from the head of the shoulder, 10 reps in, and then you can change direction and do both arms on the same side. So you're getting inside and outside and that force working both ways, which using the band is actually going to get better use of that connective tissue, the ligaments and tendons around the shoulder, which is the main reason why we're doing those internal and external rotations in the first place. So as a quick tip, try not use a plate unless of course you are trying to get those big biceps for summer so we can walk around sleeveless. Try and use the bands, try and get that force happening in the direction that you need it to, rather than getting the magical force called gravity pulling that weight down. All right, that's it. If you have any questions, let us know what you want us to go through on these videos. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Goodbye.